This is the story of something strange that happened in our school, something I still think about at night. I'm going to tell you everything, just listen carefully. It all started one winter morning. The sky was gray, and the wind felt colder than usual. I remember how everyone in class was sleepy and quiet, waiting for the first period teacher. But instead of our regular English teacher, a woman we had never seen before walked in. She was tall, thin, and wore a long black dress that almost touched the floor. Her name was Ms. Vera. That's all she said. Just Ms. Vera, with no smile, no introduction, nothing. At first we thought she was just shy or maybe strict, but the way she looked at us was strange. Her eyes were gray, almost silver, and sharp like broken glass. When her eyes met mine, I felt like she was looking inside my head, like she could see all my thoughts and secrets. I quickly looked away. I wasn't the only one. Everyone seemed uncomfortable, like something was wrong, but no one wanted to say it. She started the class without any books. No attendance, no questions, just started reading from a small notebook she carried. Her voice was low, almost like a whisper, but somehow we could hear every word. The classroom was dead silent. Not even the troublemakers said a word. It was like she had some invisible power that made you sit still and listen. I didn't understand most of what she read, and I'm sure others didn't either. The words were strange, like old poems or stories from another time. But we all listened, like we had no choice. After class, no one talked much. We just packed our bags and left. It wasn't fear exactly, more like confusion. Something about her didn't feel right, but we couldn't explain it. She didn't shout. She didn't punish anyone. But still, we felt scared. That day, even the teachers acted odd. They didn't say anything about her joining the school. No introduction in assembly, no staff meeting, nothing. It was like she had just appeared out of nowhere, and everyone was okay with it. Later that day, I asked one of the seniors if they had heard about Ms. Vera. He gave me a strange look and said, "That's the new English teacher, right? She's creepy. My class had her yesterday. Don't look into her eyes." I laughed nervously, thinking he was joking, but now I think he was serious. That night, I kept thinking about her. Her pale face, her cold eyes, her quiet voice, and the way she made the entire class silent with just her presence. It wasn't normal. I tried to forget it and sleep, but I had the weirdest dream. I saw her standing in the middle of our classroom, staring at the walls. Around her, the room was full of smoke. I couldn't breathe in the dream. I tried to run but couldn't move. Then she turned and looked at me. I woke up sweating. The next day at school, things felt even stranger. Everyone was talking less, smiling less. Even the teachers seemed more serious. And Ms. Vera was there again, sitting alone in the staff room, not talking to anyone, just staring out the window. From that moment, we all knew something wasn't right. But we had no idea how dark things would get. Ms. Vera wasn't just a strange teacher. She brought something with her, something we couldn't see, but we could feel. And soon, we would all find out the price of having her in our school. A week after Ms. Vera joined our school, something strange happened. One of the students in our class, Rahul, stopped coming. At first, we thought he was just sick, or maybe went on a family trip. That happens sometimes, but after 2 days, his best friend, Arav, looked worried. I asked him what was going on, and his voice shook when he said, "Rahul never came home after school on Monday." I didn't understand at first. "What do you mean?" I asked. Arav said he had walked halfway with Rahul that day, then Rahul took the turn toward his street, and that was it. No one had seen him after that. His parents were going crazy, searching everywhere, calling everyone, even the police. But there was no sign of him. No bag, no phone, no Rahul. What scared me more was how the teachers acted. They didn't talk about him, not even once. When someone asked about Rahul in class, Ms. Vera just said, "There is no student named Rahul in this class." And then she moved on like nothing happened. But we all remember him, his seat, his voice, his jokes. He was real. He sat in the last row near the window. That night, I couldn't sleep. Something didn't feel right. The more I thought about it, the more my chest felt heavy. I knew I had seen something strange a few days before Rahul disappeared, but I didn't think much of it then. Now it kept playing in my mind. It was 2 days before Rahul vanished. I had stayed late at school because of extra classes. I was walking past the corridor near our classroom when I heard something, a soft whisper. I paused and looked around. The school was almost empty. Then I saw her, Ms. Vera. She was standing alone inside the classroom, near Rahul's desk. The lights were off. The sun had almost set, so the room looked dark. But I could clearly see her. She wasn't moving. Just standing there, one hand on the desk, her head slightly tilted like she was listening to something. I froze. Then she started whispering. I couldn't hear the words clearly, but it sounded like some kind of chant or maybe a prayer. Her voice was soft but sharp. I took a step closer, trying to listen better, and just then, she turned around slowly and looked straight at me. I'll never forget that moment. Her eyes were glowing slightly like a cat's in the dark, and the corner of her lips lifted into the smallest, coldest smile I had ever seen. I didn't wait. I ran. I didn't even stop to catch my breath until I was outside the school gate. Now with Rahul missing, that memory hit me like a punch. What if she was doing something to him that day? What if the whispering wasn't just random? I didn't want to believe it, but everything pointed back to her. And yet, no one else seemed to notice. The next morning, Rahul's seat was empty, but what chilled me to the bone was that it looked cleaner than the others. Like no one had ever used it. No books, no marks on the table, no name tag. It was like he had been erased. I kept looking at that desk all day. And I swear once, just for a second, I saw the chair move. No one else was around it. But it moved. Like someone had just stood up and walked away. I didn't say anything to anyone, not yet, but inside I knew something was terribly wrong. And Ms. Vera, she kept teaching like nothing ever happened. There was a small room next to our classroom. We used to call it the storage room, but no one had seen inside it. The door was always locked. It had a faded sign on it, and the key was kept by the staff, or at least, that's what we thought. No student was allowed in, and teachers never spoke about it. It had always been part of the school, something we passed by every day without a second thought. But that changed after Rahul disappeared. One evening, I stayed back again. I was waiting for my sister, who had her dance practice in the auditorium. While walking around the corridor near our classroom, I heard a faint clicking sound. I turned the corner slowly, and that's when I saw her, Ms. Vera. She was unlocking the storage room. Yes, the same room that was always supposed to be locked. She moved with strange calmness, like she had done this many times before. Once she opened the door, she slipped inside quickly and closed it behind her. No lights were turned on. I waited for a minute, hiding behind a staircase. My heart was racing, but my curiosity was stronger than my fear. I walked quietly toward the door and stood very still. I placed my ear against it, trying not to make a sound. And then I heard it. Voices. But not just one. Many. Some were whispering. Some were crying. And then I heard something that made my stomach twist. Someone calling for help. Over and over again. Faint but desperate. And I swear, one of those voices, it sounded like Rahul. I stepped back, shocked. My hand was shaking. I didn't know what to do. I looked around. The corridor was empty. Not a single soul in sight. I didn't want to believe what I had just heard, but it was real. Too real. Still, I had to be sure. I reached for the doorknob, ready to open the door. But the moment my fingers touched the metal, something hit the door from the inside. Hard. The door shook violently like someone, or something, had slammed into it with full force. I fell back, nearly tripping over my own feet. The voices stopped. Complete silence. I didn't even stop to think. I turned and ran all the way to the front gate of the school. That night, I couldn't eat. I couldn't sleep. My mind was stuck on that locked room and the sound of Rahul's voice, trapped behind it. I kept asking myself the same question. What was inside that room? And what was Ms. Vera doing in there? The next day, I tried to act normal, but it was hard. I kept glancing at that door during class. It was locked again, like always. No sign that anything had happened, but I couldn't unsee what I saw, and I couldn't unhear those cries. After school, I waited until everyone left and walked past the door one more time. I pressed my ear to it again. This time, no voices. Just one sound. A soft, slow knock from the inside. I stepped back quickly, my heart pounding, and as I turned to leave, I saw something scratched into the wall next to the door. It looked fresh, 3 letters barely visible. RAH. That was enough for me. I knew I had to tell someone, but who would believe me? The teachers? They all acted like nothing was wrong. The principal? He never even mentioned Rahul once. No, I needed someone outside all this, someone who would listen, someone who would believe me before it was too late. And there was only one person I could think of. I couldn't take it anymore. The more I thought about what I had heard and seen, the more I realized that I couldn't let this go. Rahul's disappearance, Ms. Vera's strange behavior, and the terrifying sounds from that locked room. They were all connected. But I couldn't explain how or why. It felt like a puzzle that needed to be solved, and I knew I couldn't do it alone. So I decided to tell my older brother, Arjun. He was in college, and even though he was busy with his own life, I knew he would take me seriously. I didn't care if he thought I was being dramatic. I had to find out what was going on, and I needed help. When I finally told him everything about the missing students, the locked room, and Ms. Vera's strange behavior, he didn't laugh or tell me I was imagining things. Instead, he listened carefully. His face became serious, and when I finished, he said, "We're going to the school tomorrow night. You're not doing this alone." I felt a mix of relief and fear. Relief because someone finally believed me, but fear because I had a terrible feeling that whatever was going on in that school was far worse than I could imagine. That night I barely slept, my mind racing with what might happen when we went back to the school. The next evening we arrived at the school after dark. I could feel the chill in the air, and the school was eerily quiet. No cars, no students, nothing. Arjun had brought his phone with him, and we were ready to record everything, just in case. We stood in the shadows, just out of sight from the main entrance, waiting for the right moment. I felt like we were intruding, like we weren't supposed to be there. But I knew we had no choice. We had to see what was inside that locked room. At exactly 6 p.m., I saw her, Ms. Vera. She walked slowly toward the classroom, her black dress sweeping along the floor behind her. The lights flickered on by themselves, just like they had in the classroom that first day. It was as if she controlled the whole building. She walked into the classroom, and for a moment, everything was silent. But then she left, walking straight toward the storage room. My heart began to race. Arjun and I followed her, staying hidden in the shadows. She opened the door with the same calmness, as if she did this every night. And then, just like last time, the door closed behind her. We waited for what felt like hours, but it was only a few minutes before Arjun motioned for me to follow. We crept up to the door, and I pressed my ear against it once again. But this time there was something different. The voices inside were louder, clearer. The crying had stopped, replaced by what sounded like scratching, like something trying to break free. And then we heard something that froze us both in place. A voice, deep and hollow, said, "You shouldn't have come." Arjun pulled me away from the door, his face pale, his hands trembling. We backed away slowly, but just as we turned to leave, we heard it. The sound of something scraping against the floor. Slowly, the door creaked open just a little, and there she was, Ms. Vera, standing in the doorway. Her eyes were glowing brighter than before. There was no smile this time. She just stared at us, her gaze cold and filled with something darker than I could even understand. "Leave," she whispered, her voice barely audible, but powerful. Now, we didn't hesitate. We ran as fast as we could, not stopping until we were far outside the school gates. I could still hear her voice echoing in my head as we left. After that night, I knew I couldn't go back to that school, and I wasn't sure what would happen to anyone who stayed there. Arjun didn't speak a word about what we had seen, but we both knew it was worse than we thought. There was something in that room, something evil, and Ms. Vera was at the center of it. I never went back to school after that. I couldn't. And the worst part? The whispers never stopped. The next day, we didn't hear a word about Ms. Vera. It was like she had vanished into thin air. The principal made an announcement during the morning assembly. "Ms. Vera is no longer with us," he said, his voice flat and emotionless. "She has left for personal reasons." The announcement was brief, almost as if he was reading a script. No one asked questions. No one seemed surprised. It felt like the entire school was pretending she had never been there. But I knew better. I knew what we had seen, what we had heard, and I couldn't just forget about it, not after everything that had happened. I wanted to tell someone, to make sure they understood the danger that had been in our school. But who would believe me? Who would listen? Arjun didn't want to talk about it either, and I could see in his eyes that he was just as shaken as I was. We both agreed that it was best to say nothing and leave it behind. But no matter how hard I tried, I couldn't shake the feeling that something was still wrong. A few weeks passed, and life at school returned to normal, or at least it seemed that way. But there was a constant unease in the air. It was like the school was hiding something. The teachers were more distant, the students more quiet. It was as if Ms. Vera had cast a shadow over everything, and even though she was gone, it hadn't lifted. Then, one afternoon, something happened that made me realize we hadn't escaped. I was walking home from school when I noticed something strange. I passed by the school gates and looked up at the building. For a moment, I thought I saw someone standing in the window of the classroom where Ms. Vera had taught. A figure in black, watching from behind the glass. I rubbed my eyes, thinking I was imagining things, but when I looked again, it was gone. My heart skipped a beat. That night, I couldn't sleep. I kept thinking about the locked room, the voices we had heard, and the warning that Ms. Vera had given us before we ran away. Leave. Now. Was it really over? Was she gone for good? The next day, I went to school early, hoping to put my mind at ease. But when I walked past the classroom where Ms. Vera had once stood, I felt a chill run down my spine. It was as if the air was colder there than anywhere else in the school. And then, for the briefest moment, I heard it again, the whispering. Faint but unmistakable. I turned quickly and saw a shadow move across the window of the classroom. It wasn't just a trick of the light. Someone, or something, was still inside. I didn't tell anyone. I didn't want to sound crazy, but deep down I knew. Ms. Vera wasn't gone, and neither was the evil that had followed her. It was still in the school, hidden somewhere in the walls, in a locked room, waiting for the next student to cross its path. As the months went by, strange things continued to happen at the school. Every year, a student would go missing. No one would ask questions. The teachers would act like nothing had happened, and every time a new teacher came, they would speak about Ms. Vera like she was just a distant memory, a forgotten part of the school's history. But I never forgot. One night, I had a dream. I was back at the school, walking down the dark hallways. The air was thick with something cold. I passed the locked room, and for a moment, I heard the faintest sound, scratching. I turned around, but no one was there. Then I looked up, and there she was. Ms. Vera. She smiled at me, her eyes glowing in the darkness. "You should have left when you had the chance," she whispered. I woke up, drenched in sweat. I knew then that she would never leave. Not truly. She would always be there, waiting for the next person to look too closely, to ask too many questions. And if you ever find yourself near that school, with the dark windows and the locked door, remember what I'm telling you now. It's not just the school that's haunted. It's the people who walk through its halls, the ones who stay too long, the ones who listen to the whispers in the dark. You might think it's safe. You might think everything is fine. But remember this. The shadows never forget.